When I started my investment journey, I was thrilled with the idea of multi-bagger returns in the stock market. Rupees 10,000 invested in Infosys in 1993 would have made you a crorepati. Instead of buying a Royal Enfield, if you had purchased its stock in early 2000, you would have become a crorepati by 2015. And likewise, many such stories of multi-bagger returns. Hence, I started my luck in the world of stock market with a dream of generating multi-bagger returns. At that time, I had no clue about how the stock market works and how to pick the right stock. I just wanted one thing, multi-bagger returns. I thought Infosys has already generated huge return, so let me put my money in small companies that can generate huge returns like Infosys. But unfortunately, I ended up investing in the wrong stocks. As a result, rather than creating wealth, I ended up destroying my wealth. Hence, I started my journey in stock market with a failure. Thankfully, I realized my mistake and then I learned every aspect of investment to ensure that I do not repeat such mistakes. Now, why am I telling you this story? The reason is simple. There are many young investors who have recently started their stock market journey and everyone wants to generate multi-bagger returns. But let's be honest, picking multi-bagger stock is not a cakewalk. It is very easy to look at hindsight and say that I should have invested in TCS or HDFC Bank or Titan and so on. However, the question is where to invest now. And that's where many people end up picking wrong stocks. The title of this video says the best way to invest for long-term wealth creation. Now, what is the best way? Stocks, mutual funds, or a mix of both? If you have been following my channel for some time now, you would know that I diversify my money and invest in a mix of stocks and mutual funds. And within mutual fund, I invest in both passive and active funds. Now it is not that I created this portfolio of stocks and mutual fund overnight. After I did the thorough research on every aspect of money management, I realized that stock market is not that easy. You need to spend a lot of time doing the research before you pick the right stock. And no matter how much you learn theoretically, at the end of the day, you need experience in the stock market that builds over a period of time. Hence, I started with the majority of my investment in mutual funds. The reason was simple. I did not have enough time for research as I had a job and I was in my learning phase. Moreover, I wanted to reduce my risk with diversification. And mutual fund provide the right kind of diversification by investing across various categories of stocks. I just love the idea of investing systematically in the form of SIP. As I was salaried employee at that time, I started my SIP where I invested every month without worrying too much about the market movement. And trust me, I'm getting amazing returns on my mutual fund investments. Now I'm sure there are many investors who do not have the right knowledge to pick stocks, or they do not have the time to research and keep a track of stock investment. And that's where mutual funds are one of the easiest and hassle-free way to invest for long-term wealth creation. I know that the stock market is more fascinating as you can see stocks generating 10%, 15% return or even 20% return in a single day. But that is not the case with mutual funds. However, with high returns, you also get high risk. The same stock can also fall 10% or 20%. Please note that I am not saying that you should not invest in stocks. My point is to balance across stocks and mutual fund. And if you are a new investor, then it is always better to have higher allocation in mutual funds. The reason is because today when Sensex is at 60,000, everything is looking rosy. But when there will be correction, many investors would not be able to see their portfolio in red. Some of them might even panic and end up selling their investment. But trust me, if you want to create wealth, you need to invest for the long term, and one problem with stock market is that we generally end up looking at our stock portfolio too frequently. I personally face this problem where I check my stock portfolio frequently. And I'm sure there are many people who would agree with me. If you agree, tell me in the comments how frequently you look at your stock portfolio. And when you look at your portfolio frequently, any fall in the stock that you own creates panic. If the stock is not performing well for a few months, you would probably end up selling it. However, that is not the case with mutual funds. You don't look at your mutual fund NAV daily. Now, when I did more research, I got to know about the different types of mutual fund. The biggest learning was the difference between active versus passive style of investment. I hope that you already understand the difference between active versus passive mutual fund. I have already created a video in the past explaining the difference between both. So in simple terms, passive mutual funds means that the fund manager does not play an active role in fund selection. For example, many of these funds simply replicate an index like your Sensex or Nifty with the goal to generate a similar return as that of index. Whereas in active mutual fund, the fund manager actively buys and sells stocks with the goal to beat the index, or in other words, beat the benchmark. Passive funds usually have a very low expense ratio, that is fund house fee, whereas active funds charge higher expense ratio. Now, it has been proven in developed countries like the USA that in the long term, active funds are finding it very difficult to beat the index and deliver better returns. Hence, it is important to understand and invest in passive funds too. So some portion of your portfolio at least matches the return of the index and help you do not miss out on India's growth story. The problem with active fund is that the majority of people end up investing in active fund just based on the past returns, and that too for short term, like over last 1 to 3 years. For example, if a fund has given the highest return in let's say last 3 years, then there are high chances that you would end up investing in that fund. However, there is no guarantee that the fund you have chosen based on past return would continue to generate high return in the future. And there are chances that the fund may even end up generating lower than average return. I am sure many of you would have faced this issue where you would have invested in active fund and that fund did not perform well, or the high performing fund manager left. And then you get confused in terms of should you continue investing in that fund or should you exit and switch to another fund. And that's where passive funds comes in, and they are the super easy and hassle-free way to invest money without worrying about your fund manager changing or trying to beat the benchmark. Simply invest systematically and let your money grow. Just to give you an idea, if you invest let's say rupees 25,000 per month for the next 20 years and are able to earn a modest 12% CAGR return, then you would end up with a corpus of 2.5 crore rupees. This example is just to give you the idea of power of compounding for long-term investment. Now within passive funds, there are two types of options: index fund and exchange traded funds. I have already created a video on the difference between index funds and ETFs. ETFs are just like your index fund, but the difference is that they can also be traded like stocks. So you can buy and sell ETF just like stocks on the exchange. So the concept of index fund and ETF is very simple. You replicate the index in the same exact manner. For example, if Reliance has let's say 10% weightage in the index as per the free float market cap, then the index fund manager would simply invest rupees 10 out of every rupees 100 in Reliance. However, there is another form of index fund or ETFs based on equal weight index. I'm sure this would be a relatively newer concept with a lot of people. So what is an equal weight index and how is it different from a regular market weighted index? Let's try to understand this. There is no doubt that the index funds are one of the simplest way to invest money and create wealth. However, there is one issue with regular index fund. A regular index fund would simply invest your money in the same exact proportion as per the weightage of the stocks in the index. Due to this, there is a high concentration of few stocks in the index. For example, Reliance has around 10% weightage in Nifty 50. Hence, out of rupees 100, your rupees 10 would be invested in Reliance. Now that's a high concentration in a single stock. In fact, the top 10 stocks in Nifty 50 have around 58% weightage in the index today. Hence, out of rupees 100, around 58 rupees would be invested in those top 10 stocks, and the remaining rupees 42 would be invested in your remaining 40 stocks. That creates concentration risk, which means if just some of these top 10 stocks don't do well, your investment can do badly. Likewise, if you look at the sector-wise concentration, financial services have almost 37% weightage in the regular Nifty 50 index. That's again a high weightage. And that's where you have the equal weighted index that invests in top 50 companies of Nifty 50 in your equal proportion. That is 2% weightage for every company of Nifty 50. So even though Reliance has 10% weightage in Nifty 50, only 2% would be invested in Reliance. Likewise, 2% would be invested in your HDFC Bank, 2% would be invested in TCS, and so on. In this way, your financial services sector that has around 37% contribution in the index by weight would only get 21% allocation due to your equal weight rebalancing, which is much lesser than Nifty 50 index. Now, if you ask me which is a better approach, then honestly, I would say both market weighted index and equal weighted index can deliver similar performance. It is not that an equal weighted index would completely outperform the regular index at all times. Or it is not that when there will be correction, the equal weighted index will not fall. Both would fall. Always remember that both stocks and mutual fund investments are subject to market risk and their performance would depend upon the overall market condition. However, it has been observed in the past that when there is a big market correction, the equal weighted index falls less as compared to your market weighted index. The reason is due to equal rebalancing of stocks and sectors rather than having high concentration of a single stock or a single sector in the index. One good statistics I found is that if you look at the long-term return, then Nifty 50 equal weight index has done slightly better on average than Nifty 50 index over a longer period of time. In fact, over the 10-year period, the equal weighted Nifty 50 index gave more return than Nifty 50 index 72% of the times. And over the last approx 22 years, your money would have grown 29 times had you invested in Nifty 50 equal weight index. Not bad. By the way, I have already mentioned some regular index funds in the past. However, if you want to explore the Nifty 50 equal weight fund, then there's a new Nifty 50 equal weight ETF that has been introduced by the DSP Mutual Fund, which I think is India's first equal weight ETF. This is strange. It is India's first equal weight ETF when the size of the equal weight strategy based ETF in America is over rupees 7 lakh crore. Anyways, DSP Nifty 50 equal weight ETF would invest in your top 50 stocks of Nifty 50 in equal proportion. So there will be less concentration and more diversification, which also means no specific bias towards any stock or sector. Of course, there will be periodic rebalancing every quarter. In fact, DSP also has an equal weight Nifty 50 index fund called DSP Equal Nifty 50 Fund. If you look at the last 1 year performance of DSP Equal Nifty 50 Index Fund, it has generated slightly higher return than your Nifty 50 Index. So if you want to invest in an equal weight Nifty 50 Index Fund but looking for index fund and not an ETF, then you can also have an option from DSP Mutual Fund. So in this video, we discussed the best way to invest for long-term wealth creation. The right approach is to have a balance of both stocks and mutual fund. And within mutual fund, balance your investment across your active and passive funds. If you are someone who is new to the world of investment, then passive funds or index funds are the best way to invest. Although you can certainly invest in stocks, I would suggest having higher allocation in your passive fund. Specifically ETFs, since they can also be traded on the exchange. Passive funds are also beneficial for someone who has a job or business and does not get a lot of time to research stocks and find it expensive to buy shares of the top companies in India. Within passive investment, you have both index fund and ETF. And now you also understand the difference between your Nifty 50 index versus Nifty 50 weighted index. I really like the idea of this equal weight strategy. But I want to know, what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to explore the new DSP Nifty 50 equal weight ETF or DSP Equal Nifty 50 Fund, you can check the links in the description. I hope you will find this video useful. I'll see you in next video. Till then, take care. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risk. Read all scheme related documents carefully.